Hi, this is Chris at Darker Days Radio, and of course, you're listening to Realm of Fire. Now, normally, Realm of Fire starts off with some cold opening where we're talking, generic rubbish and having a laugh about Games Workshop and war games and just how silly and stupid it can all be. But instead, rather than that kind of cold opening, I'd like to just open this episode and give a heartfelt condolences to the family of Brian Ansell, who unfortunately, the very day we were recording this episode, passed away at age 68. Obviously, Brian's impact on wargaming, Warhammer, Games Workshop is massive. I don't really need to explain that to everyone to this, but I thought it was just important to, make those feelings, make and condolences known, and let's get into the episode. God, I don't know where to begin. It's the end of the year. It's the end of everything. It's the it's when history came to an end in Babylon 5. Typical style. Yeah. Jakar's there giving a great opening lines, and it's 2024 coming in with tons of fucking games going on.
So many.
Anything we should really just bitch and whine about immediately before we get into this? Like, I've still not played any 10th Ed.
Well, don't worry, I got you covered.
Yeah, you got that covered.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's the dumbest thing I've seen possible? Even if Games Workshop gets fucking videos out, movies, TV out through Amazon, we're gonna have adverts in it. So you'll be midway watching Henry Cavill blowing people apart with a bolt gun, and then you're gonna get like, I don't know, an advert for a fucking Tesla, like. And that's when you're paying the subscription already.
This is Warhammer Plus?
No, this is on Amazon Prime. You pay Prime, right? If you pay for Amazon Prime, you're getting free shipping throughout the year. Okay, so depending upon how much stuff you get through it, I know there's a kind of like, should you shop from other places? And it's like, well, that's easier said than done for a lot of people. But that also means through it, you also get Amazon Prime, video.
Right, yeah.
But now that means even if you're paying for that, they're making it such that you'll get adverts in the video content you watch unless you pay a further fee of like a couple of bucks. It's just like, is this?
Yeah. Everyone's doing that. And I'm surprised that Warhammer Plus hasn't gotten into this, because you would think they're like, oh, we need to have advertisements, got to get more revenue. But then they're going to realize, oh, we can't talk about any other product from any other company. So it's just going to be advertisements for either their stuff or like, oh, have you gotten the new Warhammer candles? We got great new flavors. Check them out right now.
Fucking candles. Like, I still can't believe those were a thing.
Yoga pants.
And it's just madness. It's just crazy that. Oh, I guess we should really just start this episode. So, this is Realm of Fire. We're going to be talking about wargaming and other side-related nonsense, as always. I'm one of your regular hosts, Chris, and I'm joined by Mike. And let's get into this. So, where do we want to start? Let's start with Mini of the Year. Just because like Games Workshop's done their Mini of the Year. It was The Lion.
Come on, are you serious? I mean, when you put this in the show notes, I said, what's come out this year? And then I immediately thought of The Lion, and I said, nah, I don't like that one.
Angron came second.
Goodness gracious.
Commander Farsight came third, which still, it's a more dynamic pose, but it's a Tau battlesuit.
Tau battlesuits kind of look derp. They've always looked derpy, except for those like OG stealth suits. I liked those back in the day, back in 2003. It's, I don't know. I mean, who voted for these? Was it just the studio
No, this is voted by survey.
The community?
So things like Commander Dante, which is a pretty good miniature. Talia Vedra, the Cities of Sigma commander on Manticore. That came out, that massive winged beastie, pretty good. The Norn emissary for the Tyranids, that was funky. It's still just kind of like it's a Tyranid.
So it's all big centerpiece models basically, which makes sense, right?
Yeah,
that's always been an attraction. You want to, for Warhammer Fantasy, you'd have a bunch of your rank and files, and then you have that big centerpiece model, the dragon, the manticore, Carl Franz on the griffin, and same thing with 40K back in the day. You'd have a lot of infantry, and then you have like your one or two tanks, and that would be
Yeah.
like a really cool thing, or maybe your demon prince for Chaos Space Marines. But now it's just big stuff everywhere. I saw an Age of Sigmar game going on, and it just looked ridiculous. It was just a giant furball of miniatures in the middle, and some of them were little scrappy dudes, and there was a whole bunch of these just giant monstrosity fancy miniatures. And I was like, what is even happening here?
Well, we'll get to why I'm not playing Age of Sigmar as well. I think that's the whole crux of our problem with the main core games. Anyway, so what's your mini of the year?
Okay, well, I want to give an honorable mention, of course, to the Flesh Eater Courts for Age of Sigmar. They just had some new releases coming out, and they look really great, and they've got some awesome art, just tying everything together. But for my top miniature, which is going to be a unit, I actually went with the Wildecor Hunters for Warcry. I know this might surprise some people because they're not the most fancy dynamic miniatures, but I think they have tons of uses, both in Age of Sigmar, Warcry, RPGs, anything like that. And these miniatures also are a great stand-in for the old Witch Hunter models for Mordheim, which I think is really cool. They did the same thing with those like novitiates for the Adeptus Sororitas in Kill Team as well. They were great Sisters of Sigmar stand-in miniatures. A little conversion, instead of pistols, give them maces, boom, you got them. And I really like when they do this kind of stuff where they have these like multi-use kits, basically. I'm also really excited for those Inquisitors coming out for Kill Team. I don't think they're out yet. Maybe they are. But yeah, some really great stuff. So that's going to be my top pick.
Inquisitors for Kill Team? You mean that box has already been and gone?
Been and gone? Oh, I missed it.
The Inquisitorial Warband. Versus Chaos Cultists. That's been out and been and gone.
Oh, okay.
The next Kill Team release is the new Primaris Scouts and versus Striking Scorpions.
Striking Scorpions, that's right. Yeah.
We're
Striking
finally
Scorpions.
Getting there. Eldar are finally getting there.
They need the models. I'm not too excited about them, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
They're what you expect, but I mean, they're what should have been out like 10 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. They were probably sitting there for 10 years too.
Quite possibly. I would say I would say honourable mention to the Eskurgan Tree Blades for Warcry, because they're vampires we've not really seen before and represent quite a different kind of design language for undead and in Warhammer in general, because they're quite pseudo East Asian in their armor style. So I like that. They're also pretty good in the game. But I would say my favorite miniature was one that got an honorable mention in the actual survey, is the Harbinger of Decay, which is a Age of Sigmar model, which is basically it's a throwback to a miniature that I had for my Nurgle army back in the day in like 6th edition Warhammer. So it's just the dude on the emaciated horse with a scythe, and it's just to see it recreated in full plastic with the detail they're able to achieve now. It's fucking awesome.
It's one of the spiciest miniatures they've ever done for Warriors of Chaos back in the day. Yeah, it's one where he's on the decayed horse, got the scythe pointing to who knows what, pointing to your enemy general, pointing for where the army needs to go. I think there's a raven as well, or a crow or something. It's
a little signpost to whichever city he's about to lay siege to.
Interesting, Chris, that we answered all Age of Sigmar stuff here for miniatures of the year.
Yeah. I think that's where kind of like the more exciting designs are right now is Age of Sigmar. Absolutely. And that's because there's a lot more to explore. I mean, we've had a lot this year, like with other stuff, like, there's been some interesting Necromunda models out, but I mean,
True, there are.
And Legions Imperialis, while pretty cool, I don't think you can really give Miniature of the Year to, because they're individually, it's just a little man on a base. A little man on a base.
Some of those Titans, I say, could have been in the running for Miniature of the Year when they came out. But
When
of
they
course,
came
right
out,
now
yeah.
they're just repackaged basically. Yeah, it's yeah, a lot more creativity going on. And one thing, I think I made this comment on the Discord, but when a new 40k release comes out, it's like, oh, here's another Primaris Lieutenant, and it's like,
Yeah,
oh, another one. For Age of Sigmar, it's like, oh, here's another vampire. They're pumping out so many vampires, but they all look freaking cool, and
yeah.
I guess they're selling as well, which is pretty rad.
Well,
So
Age of Sigmar's like had
creativity,
the other thing this year, like I can't remember which ones have come out, but you also look at the war bands that came out for either Warcry, or you look at war bands for Underworlds, and they're
right?
just like there's just so much like diversity and stuff,
Hmm.
and they're not trying to oh, it's not like Kill Team where they're like trying to go, oh, here's this new unit for 40k, but we're going to package it and sell it through this box set to do Kill
Yeah.
Team. It's actually like, here's just this really characterful unit that
Mm.
in itself tells a story, but then in Age of Sigmar is this cool, elite unit that you have, and then in Warcry is a group of Bladeborn to hire. So yeah, Age of Sigmar is definitely more exciting. Necromunda's kind of cool. I mean, it's going to be arriving on my doorstep like next week. Is the Tauros for the Palanite Enforcers. So that's the buggy kind of
Oh
armored
yeah,
vehicle.
yeah, the Elysian drop troopers vehicle that they repurposed. Yep.
Yeah, so that's kind of fun. It's good to see that. Hopefully, I would bet good money that vehicle will get repackaged also with an alternate sprue for Imperial Guard. Hands down, I expect that to happen.
It's likely. It's likely.
It just
I
seems
could see
right.
it. I could see it going to Gene Stealer cults too. But again, maybe it appears in
Ooh,
both armies. As part of the Blood Brother
yeah.
features. So yeah, I could see that going either way.
So what have you been playing?
I haven't played any war games since we last talked. Well, no, wait, played 10th edition, so did that. And also been playing a lot of Crusader Kings 3, which is a pretty sweet video game where you try to conquer the medieval world or just manage your dynasty. It's a pretty fun game, and I've been painting lots of Dark Eldar, getting that ready for an upcoming 3rd edition game, which will be happening real soon.
And
So
how are you painting Drukhari?
uh man, so I've been kind of oscillating back and forth. Right now they're the Obsidian Rose faction, which is they're like really good weaponsmiths or something. Listen, the Cabal lore for Dark Eldar is pretty lame, to be honest. It's not really detailed or very fleshed out. There's some like good overall stuff for Dark Eldar themselves, with the city of Camorra and different like politics going on in there, but the actual factions themselves are all pretty lame, not anything that interesting. So
Yeah.
I was painting these guys. They're already red as the Obsidian Rose, red and black, but I was thinking like, oh, maybe I wanted to be like the Inari and that whole faction that's kind of
Oh yeah,
sprung
yeah.
up, the ones between the Exodites, the Harlequins, the Craft Worlds, and the Drukhari or Dark Eldar themselves. And I started reading the lore for that, and I was like, this could be a bit zestier. So I'm going to stick with the just the Obsidian Rose for now. They're
Cool.
also red, like the Inari are, and we'll see if I kind of expand that.
So is that kind of like have you done a black prime with a red spray over and just kind of leaving some of the shading in there and then just highlighting up?
Yeah, they're primarily black. So I'm using right now. I've been painting the infantry, so it's been a lot of
Yeah.
gesso. Actually, I'm using, and then I'm doing basically tons of edge highlighting and dry brushing.
Hmm.
So they'll be red, and then they'll have, once I get to it, kind of like ivory guns, which will look pretty cool.
Cool. Yeah.
Yep.
I would have, I mean, if I was doing that, I would have done red prime, dry brush up with a lighter red, and then hit it with like a black contrast paint. And then
Yeah, I don't have
to
the
kind of glaze it and so
which is that
forth to
one?
kind of smooth out the transition.
Like Korax Black. Is that the one
Mm.
that's kind of the lighter black? I've got so much Black Legion.
It's Black Templar, a contrast black.
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
thinner than Black Legion. Black Legion you'll go to when you go like, I need to black something, but I need it thin immediately. That's like
Right.
That's which leads me to my stuff. Yeah, so I've been playing some Warcry. I played first game of Warcry. That's going to be getting some people into a campaign. So I played the first game, not really of part of that of a campaign, but like the first game to kind of like as we established the gaming group at the local club.
Cool.
So I introed someone to Warcry, and again, it's just like you play the first turn, they're just learning the rules, and then the second turn, you can see how it immediately clicks for them, how the system works, and how the action economy and reaction, the dice system of the doubles, triples, quadruples to activate abilities. Yeah, it was really good. It was a bit one-sided because I had, it was basically we had to get enough models off each other's board edge, and the opponent had Stormcast, who are fucking slow, and I had Cypher Lords, and I just did. I was trying to not do too much shenanigans initially, just kind of teach the game, and then I was like, okay, I think at this point I may as well just show you what's possible in the game, and then just like triggered like teleportation shenanigans and just moved, literally across half the board and then off and won the game that way. But yeah, really good fun. So it's about, I think there's going to be about 10 of us maybe. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. But Chris, I got a question about that demo game. Aren't you you worked for Games Workshop for a little while? Aren't you supposed to let the new player win?
Well, that may be true if I was working at a store and being paid. But no, I was drinking it. I was having a pint and playing a game. Okay. So fuck it. Sometimes you learn by losing. So Warcry is great. I've got a little bit of terrain to paint up. The fountain that's part of the original Warcry terrain series that came out in one of the sprues for whichever magazine supplement it was. So I'm going to put that together, paint that, and then it just basically means because I've got so many terrain kits, I can take them all along and we can have a good campaign. And also, Warcry 2.0 campaign system is much more developed. Like, you can get serious injuries, and there's a lot more like items you can pick up. And one of the cool features I really like about that I noticed in it is you don't gain territory like you do in, say, Necromunda, but what you're really trying to do is trying to upgrade your territory to gain one which allows you to have a greater points threshold for your entire warband and get certain other benefits. So it's kind of like you're trying to move through the territories, move through the landscape to find somewhere better to make camp. So that's kind of cool.
Nice.
And then also in the latest White Dwarf I was looking at, they've brought out the Warcry campaign rules for Cities of Sigmar, which also have free rules online for. So all the new Cities of Sigmar models have rules already. So that cool ogre with the dude in the crow's nest with a volley gun, that's got rules in Warcry.
Okay,
so that's all kind of cool. Warcry is as we always say, Warcry is like the best Age of Sigmar game going right now.
Yeah, definitely. It is. What's the setting right now?
It's all set in Gur.
Yeah,
it's all Realm of Beasts. So it's all very much kind of like the last terrain kit they brought out was like the Sotek kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. That's definitely a big difference than the original kind of, chaos focus of it. So that's interesting, though. It's definitely a lot more open. I think
it just shows that if they do kind of a 2 whatever version, they're clearly just going to do terrain kits that represent that world. So if they did like Realm of Metal, that'd be kind of weird. Maybe get cool crystalline outcrops and stuff like that.
Nice. I like it. So, Chris, what do you want to? What's the conceit for this episode?
The conceit of this episode is that older games were clearly better, which we've already kind of jinxed that because we just said Warcry is fucking awesome. So what we really mean is, were older editions of certain games better than their current incarnations?
Yeah.
And this comes back to our theory, our theory, our whinging, our moaning, our grogginess about how current 40k is fucking hard to learn because. And I was talking to James about this because James
Yeah.
who podcasts with us, he's worked on like Magic the Gathering online, so he did a lot of the game design and how you get Magic the Gathering to work as an online card game. And it also reflects back to like when I've tried to get my partner into playing like uh certain games like that, and it just doesn't gel with her because like you
Right.
have to know what's not only on your cards but everything on the other player's cards, and all what's on the cards break generally the core mechanic, are
Right.
exceptions
Right.
to the core mechanics of the game. Like you could reduce Magic the Gathering to a few basic rules and it would still be a game, but if you compare first edition Magic to where we are now, there's so many exceptions to exceptions to exceptions. It's like, how do
Yeah.
you play it? How do you know everything? So I feel 40k and Age of Sigmar is a bit like that because what you see on a stat line is not everything. And that's where
Correct.
it starts getting bogged down a lot.
Quite often with the current editions, what you see on the stat line doesn't really matter that much,
No.
which is pretty crazy. Yeah, there's been a proliferation of special rules, and I've heard people say this that are like 40k tournament players. It's like a full time job, just keeping up with everything, learning
Yeah.
all those mechanics, learning the rules, and memorizing every single codex and all the different things. Checking up on Reddit to figure out what the current meta is for a lot of people, figuring out how to break the meta lists. Because if you go into like a Swiss tournament, a lot of people are just going to be net listing is what you call it these days for
Yeah.
whatever the the flavor of the month is. So just figuring out how to beat that, but also having capabilities to go against other armies as well. It's kind of ridiculous and not very conducive to the vast majority of Games Workshop's audience, basically.
It's
You've
not
heard this a lot.
very like easily pick up because the thing that annoys me about it is that you go, here's the stat, like if you build an army, you go, well, here's the stat line of your units, right? And they've got certain weapons, and those weapons have abilities associated with them. And I think they've unified a lot of that to a vast extent. So like a weapon will have a few traits, and that feels more like third edition 40k. And
Yep.
we'll get to that in a moment. But
Okay.
then a unit will have an ability associated with it, and that's same in Age of Sigmar. And that ability will have its own unique name. But actually, the text on the for the ability, you're like thinking, is that really that different from this other specifically named ability on this other unit in a different army? Is it really that different? And that's why I then reflect and think about how you build an army in 40k and Age of Sigmar, because it's like, first of all, you choose your faction, you're gonna build, you're gonna pick units. They've all got special rules on their unit roster card. You've picked a chapter of or equivalent fucking thing, so that's got special. Your faction has some special rules, and you've got to pick one from a table of like 3 or 4, and you're gonna have to do the same when you pick a chapter. So that's one from a table of 3 or 4 abilities, and then you've got what stratagems, and some of those are army specific. You're gonna pick from a table of a few of those, etc. Then you've got psychic powers, and that's a unique table. You're going to
Yeah.
pick one for your psycho from a table of about 6. And Age of Sigmar is essentially that same sort of build style. And it
Yeah.
means what you've got on that list of profiles, which are easily understood and across any army, plus say it's got like, I know, rapid fire, or it's got rend, or not rend, but a few other abilities that are like universal and therefore keyword. And then there's this glut of stuff which is just like, you wouldn't know if your opponent was like, what is that? You'd be like, well, it's this. And they're like, okay. But is it really that distinct to be uniquely named that way? I don't know. And that's where my problem is with 40k and Age of Sigmar right now. There's so many extras to the core set of stat lines.
Yeah, you're not going to get any argument from me. I'll say that 10th edition has definitely slimmed things down a bit.
Mm.
Like let's say like a 25% reduction in special rules just because of universal things and some general similarities used between armies. But yeah, there's still just a lot going on. Now, having played 10th edition finally and gotten into it a little bit, I think the core system for 10th is pretty good. I think Battle Shock really has made things a lot more interesting than just the extra model removal
Yeah.
after combat. And there's like some pretty good just general interactions on the battlefield and activations. However, again, because of that proliferation of special rules, it makes it really tough to just know everything that's going on. So I think if you play 10th edition at lower points levels, it's actually still a pretty good game. I haven't played Combat Patrol yet, but that might also be pretty rad. Just because it's a smaller number of units. The other thing I'll say is that because they decreased the size of the battlefield, using the general mats and measurements, it
Yeah.
makes high points values ridiculous. I was mentioning that giant furball in Age of Sigmar
Yeah.
game. If you're going and you're playing with Bane Blades and Stormlords at any points level, it just looks ridiculous. You have this tank that takes up 1/16 of the battlefield just sitting right there. It can't really maneuver. The terrain blocks
Yeah.
it, and if you do have wide open corridors for it to maneuver, that's a huge disadvantage for the opponent. So they're not going to allow that to happen. There's some weird things going on with 40k right now, and I understand why they've been making some of these changes. If you look at how the rules are set up now with 8th, 9th, and 10th, it feels a lot like a sports game where you're scoring scoring points every round. Basically seeing like how can I kind of catch up, how can I take a lead,
Yeah.
and having those
Yeah.
interactions, which is very good actually from a viewing standpoint. I think they are really trying to kind of sportsify 40k a little bit. I think that is one of the end goals. Hasn't been successful. Well, yes and no. We don't really have like ESPN or whatever the equivalent is in the UK following 40k tournaments, but you can see on YouTube there's a lot of people that like to watch battle reports and follow that, and there can be a lot of excitement with how the interactions go from round to round. The other thing I want to point out, I think it's very interesting what you brought up about the comparison to Magic Gathering, Chris, because I think that a lot of the inspiration they took with the especially 9th edition strategy mechanics, but also 10th edition, and the other unit interactions was the kind of collectible card game combo system
Yeah.
where you're trying to get all of your cards aligned, get them all in your hand, and then you're like, bing, bang, boom, look at this crazy effect I just had, and I win the game. Of course, as they were announcing the 10th edition, they're trying to reduce that a little bit because it feels ridiculous when you have a unit of Grots all get these special power up stratagems and other abilities and then take out Terminators. That just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And I will say that it seems like that has been reduced a little bit with 10th edition, but it's kind of a series of half measures, I'd say.
It's like Games
And
Workshop police coming after you because you're
yeah.
dumping on 10.
Sorry, I guess you heard that in the background. Yeah. No, they can't catch me. They can't take me
catch
alive.
you, no.
So I mean, I feel like there's a way to play 10th that is pretty rad, and I think that's at lower points values.
Yeah.
I haven't played it higher or much higher yet, and I don't think I will, but if I do, I'll probably come back on and give you some other reviews. But that's just how I feel right now.
I do want to play some what was it? Combat Patrol, because I've got 2 models to paint for my Necrons to make it a Combat Patrol, and I've got my Sisters and Tyranids. My Marines are definitely not a Combat Patrol because I would need to have like everything that came in that Combat Patrol. Basically, I've got the old style Combat Patrol.
Right.
But I mean, it's interesting, the Combat Patrols, because they reduce they slim the rules down even further because you don't have as many of those options, and stuff has like even less special rules on them. So you're basically back down to you're back to the raw stat line of each unit and very little else, which is good. And I've yet to play 4th edition of War Machine, but War Machine hasn't changed that much between editions. It really hasn't. If anything, they've gone down the route. The main thing they've done as they've gone, as they've moved along, is they've changed essentially how they deal with template weapons. In other words, they don't exist in the same way. They're a bit more like how 40k deals with them, and they've also made how you move units more rapid, so you get less of that that kind of weird shit you get in tournaments with it.
Where they're
But
kind of like
ultimately,
nudging around, and you're
yeah,
finding like that one little
and they
quarter
got rid of
inch.
They got rid of facings as well in
Yeah,
War Machine, just to
that's fun.
again to slim it down and speed up movement, so it's less finicky. But the point
Yeah,
is that when you look at War Machine, there's a unified set of abilities on weapons and things. So that means if a spell has a name, it's actually going to be the same name no matter which person's using it, because it's the same fucking rule, and it will be
mhm,
verbatim the same rule. And so it means there's a lot less like gotchas in that game, I feel, because you're reading from the same script, as it were.
yeah.
And the only place where you get the weird kind of unique turn up is with the Warcasters and their feats, which should feel unique. But again, when you read the
Sure,
rules,
sure.
it's they only really manipulate what the core rules do, which is like, everyone gets +3 armor in your army in control range. Fine, that operates with the rules. Whereas I always feel like 40k is like, you read the rules and it's doing something really weird, like the Eldari pool of dice you use to exchange on a dice
Oh
roll,
yeah, yeah.
or ridiculous
The
numbers of re-rolls, or
mm,
you've got
mm.
is it the sisters have got their faith points that you use in some, you build up faith points as things die and then you use those on things.
Yeah, and that's
Everything's
yeah,
everything across the entire army is really unique, and I just, on top of everything else, that is also a unique table to select from, and you just don't have that in War Machine. It's yeah, it's interesting about how you restrict yourself in game design, and or don't, and how you work within that outline that you've put in place.
right, right. I think that's an interesting thing to bring up, because let's use another Games Workshop example, which would be Warhammer Fantasy Battles 6th edition and 7th edition.
Yeah,
Generally more 7th edition, wherein most armies worked off of the same concepts. They
yeah,
would be rank and file infantry, moving around, wheeling, and trying to get in there. There were a couple of armies that broke those core mechanics due to their special rules. Those being Bretonians with their lance formation, which was
sure.
incredibly powerful. A lot of people liked playing them because they were so OP. Uh, then you had the Wood Elves and the Beastmen, who were very skirmish
Skirmish,
focused
yeah.
and also had the ambushing. Wood Elves pretty good, mostly because of being undercosted in some cases. Beastmen, Beast Chaos didn't do so well, mostly because they were overcosted and the assumption of their ambush mechanic didn't really work. So
And
we
we
have this
can
game.
and we can add
Mhm.
another one into that. We'll add one more that kind of slightly broke the rules of that, is Tomb Kings,
I was
which
about
is
to say, yeah,
topical,
you're right.
because
Yep.
they essentially just broke the norm of how the magic system worked, because they basically took what was quite a um swingy kind of like
Right.
magic
Right.
system, and made it very robust and predictable. But that was
Yeah.
quite a feature.
Yeah. Yeah. And they also broke psychology a little bit as well
Oh
because they
yeah,
were
every
generally
undead
all
army
immune.
breaks psychology.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but my core conceit was that, and that was a good point you brought up the Khemri as well, because they're kind of a different thing. But with those other three armies in particular, they were special cases that broke the core mechanics of the game, and because of that, they were either too powerful or not powerful enough. With 40k and the way that some of these core mechanics work, it feels like every single faction breaks the game, which
yeah.
can be part of the fun, right? Things are really unbalanced. Who knows what's going to happen? Every army is incredibly unique, but it makes balancing it, especially for a competitive scene, nigh impossible. They're trying, they have their meta watch and all that kind of stuff, but for making this a sort of competitive tournament game, ESPN, that sort of thing, it's going to be really tough. It's going to be really tough.
So does this bring us to the core conceit of why 40k third edition, and perhaps why your theory, which you'll get to, is about the simplicity and the kind of pared backness of the games is what kind of made them easy to play and easy to learn and also keep on top of?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really sit here with a straight face and tell you that Warhammer 40k third edition was the best game system ever. I
No.
mean, it's clearly not. It's got a lot of problems, and I'll definitely be bringing up some of those. But from an accessibility standpoint, I think it's really good. And there's a reason why, when it came out in 1998, Games Workshop exploded. They had so many new players coming in, a lot of excitement, a lot of growth, a lot of new armies coming out as well.
Yeah.
And I think that all kind of plays into that kind of simplicity and accessibility of 40k third edition. So I've been playing a bunch of games lately. We've been using my Imperial Guard and Chaos Space Marines for that.
Wow.
And we've been using the army lists for the first few games.
From the back of the book?
Yeah, from the back of the book, which,
Wow.
if you remember from third edition, are really slimmed down. Very few special rules. You look at Space Marines, they're basically just a stat line. No other special rules. I think they might have, and they shall know no fear as a universal special rule. Chaos Space Marines, I don't think they have any special rules.
They didn't
just
have that. You basically, Chaos Space Marines differed from regular Space Marines by being cheaper, I think.
I think they're the same price. I think they're 15 points. They just get leadership 9, as opposed to Space Marines get leadership 8, but they shall know no fear. So they just basically fall back and then automatically rally.
But yeah,
in a way that
the difference between, because you said it was Imperial Guard versus Chaos Space Marines, like the literal difference between those units is on the profiles and the profiles of the weapons they're using. Like,
right.
One is toughness 3, one is toughness 4, one is strength 3, one is strength 4. They move at the same rate because 40k third edition was movement 6, flat movement 6. Other than difference in number of attacks, they had 1 each. Leadership, as you say, is like 9 versus, I guess, a 7 on Imperial Guard.
Yeah, standard 7. Yep.
And then what else is there? Like their weapon profile. What it's going to be 24 inches, rapid fire. One is strength 3, flashlight. The other one is strength 4 with... Did we even have AP on that?
AP 5, right? So back in third edition, there was your straight armor save. If they had armor penetration equal to or beating your armor save, just didn't get a save. If they didn't have that, then you got your full save. There was no modification.
If your AP was 5, it would negate anything of armor 6 down to 5.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, it's all coming back. It's all coming back.
I know. Yeah, this is you start with second edition, right? Yeah. You start with second edition, correct?
And that's a huge... This is you have to think this is a huge change coming from second edition 40k with how that combat system worked with the roll X number of dice, and you're looking for the number of difference in the value, the top value and the parries, and then the dearth of fucking items that were in Dark Millennium. And then there's how Tyranids worked, which was madness when they came out, and I know that because that was my army. 40k third edition was a great reset.
It was.
But the thing that was shit, and I'll say this was shit at the time, and it was hard, it was tough, it was fucking tough to stomach with a Tyranid army, was I was as slow as everyone else, and that pissed me off a lot.
Yeah, because they could just walk backwards shooting you until they got to the back of the board.
But it meant I actually played my Tyranid army for once like a true swarm army, because I would just be like, well, fuck it, you can shoot me as much as you like. You're going to get through all these, get through all the Hormigants, or you get through all the Termagants, then you might get through all the Gene Stealers, and then there's the Tyranid Warriors, then there's the Hive Tyrant. It was like a true, Zerg swarm attack, while the Biovore is just spitting over, whatever the fuck they're called, spore mines.
Yeah.
And, and then you have the Carnifex running forward. It actually forced... That army worked exactly as I expected, and then they brought out... they started doing the codexes updates, which kind of addressed some of the missing kind of things that felt a bit off in the armies.
Sometimes, yeah. So third edition had a really strange release schedule where the core game came out and then they started pumping out codexes. Like I think it was one every month or two. So you got
Yeah.
bam, Space Marines, boom, Orcs, Chaos, Imperial Guard, yada yada, and then it kind of slowed down. And then they took a while for the other ones. So Tyranids didn't come out until I think like 2001. It was like
They were
3 years after.
They were super slim codex as well.
Yeah,
They were
the
like,
original ones. Yeah, they got a bit thicker towards the end. Yeah. So I think that's when Tyranids came out, and that's when they finally got Fleet of Claw, if I remember correctly. So
yeah.
they could roll. You could not shoot, roll an extra d6, move
We
extra.
house rolled that. We house ruled that.
Oh,
They
okay.
just got an extra d6 of that because it was just stupid.
Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, the codexes started coming out. Then they started revising some of the codexes, like Imperial Guard got a new one, Chaos Space Marines got a new one, which was a lot more flavorful and also very broken. Dark Eldar needed to get a second edition because their codex didn't work, and classic stuff like that. So, but the reason why I decided to use the army lists in the back of the rule book is because they were so simplified and very easy for people to learn. And in third edition came with this little two-sided quick reference rule sheet, rules card, and that told you 90% of the rules you need to know for the game.
Exactly.
It makes it so easy for people to learn. Just hand it to them, they read through, they see the kind of flow chart of how things work. Bing bang boom. They know how to play the entire game by let's say turn 3.
It's one page rules. It's basically one page rules approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the game has a lot of limitations. If you're just playing a pickup game like you would in the store back in 1998, your army either stands and shoots or you move forward into close combat. There's not as much maneuver and shooting for a pitched battle. That's why you actually really need objectives. And special missions, which I never really played back in the day, and I think that was why I had issues with third edition when I was younger and becoming more experienced in wargaming. But in playing them now, a lot of these are really cool. Like there's an awesome breakout mission where one force is trying to escape to the other side of the board. They're going long ways across, and then the defenders are literally defending like a static line, so they get bombarded, turn 0, bombarded by artillery. Attacker starts to move forward, and then defender gets reinforcements from basically the side the attacker is trying to escape across. That's so cool. Like that is a really epic game right there, and just makes things spicy. But you can also use other things, just with like battling over particular objectives, collecting points each turn, just to make things a lot more interesting. And there's even this is crazy. There's a Crusade style campaign system in it where like your guys can get special rules as they get more experience if you're playing a campaign, which I didn't even realize was in there.
I forgot that was even in there.
Yeah, no one talks about it. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. But there's also a bunch of issues. Just to wrap up, I think a lot of the third edition discussion. If you read Close Combat as written, there is no pile-in.
Yeah,
unless there's a tie for number of wounds and neither side breaks. That's the only time the rules say you can actually have a pile-in of like 6 inches. So that means reading as written, technically you could have a situation where one Grot and a Space Marine are fighting and the rest of their squads just stand there watching until somebody's dead. Now, it's so weird to read that and realize this now because, I learned the game, I was taught by a friend, right? And I think they learned how to play in a Games Workshop store. So they were just taught how to basically do pile-in, even though it wasn't part of the rules. Because the staffers were just like, oh yeah, this is just how you play. It's fine. And I think everyone like kind of just it's like a Bernstein Bears situation where everyone thinks that's a rule and just assumes it's the case and plays like that, but it never actually was. I think also they fixed it in a White Dwarf eventually later. But it's just wild how in those days the way you played was just kind of how you were taught, not what the rules necessarily said.
Well, it just shows that like 40k, 40k second edition. Like, could you imagine playing tournament games with that rule set? Like, are you fucking?
Oh my gosh,
it
would take forever.
And third edition, likewise, it is quite clear. It wasn't designed to be a game for tournaments. It's designed to be a starting point for narrative games. Like, it was bare bones that you go, right, I'm going to play fucking, I don't know, play Eldari of Samhain. So you're going to be like, what? You're going to go, well, the rules as they are in the back of the book don't really kind of feel right for that kind of thing. So you'd be, again, agree with the opponent. Oh, we'll do this. And you'd be like, yeah, sure, fine.
Yep.
And it's that bare bones nature, or at least that bare bones with a very common kind of script for how the game works, and therefore how you can manipulate it to give flavor or differentiate things, I think was core. And it still showed, because like 4th edition 40k I think was quite good, and it wasn't that it was a refinement of 3rd edition, and that's pretty much like 5th is I think 5th edition was the last one I played before I left
5th is like,
GW.
I think 5th is the ultimate refinement of this core thing, and then 6th and 7th tried to do a lot of tinkering, and that's where things got a little messy. I think that's
and I think that's what
narrative.
we're still suffering from. I think we're still suffering from those editions, personally. Or at least we're suffering from their attempts to try and correct those by adding in other things, and I don't know. But yeah, you've got some other theories of how this fits into other games.
Yeah. So this has been kind of an experiment I've been doing, because I've had this theory for a long time that I call it the reset theory. And a lot of Warhammer editions come out with these slimmed down army lists. They came out with Warhammer Fantasy 6th edition, Warhammer Fantasy 4th edition, 3rd edition 40k,
1st edition Age of Sigmar.
Yep, 8th edition Warhammer 40k as well. And my theory is that some of the best gaming you could get with Warhammer is taking these really simplified lists where they try to balance the points based off of what's actually in the character or in the unit profile, and play that with a cleaned up rule set. So play 4th edition 40k using the 3rd edition simplified army lists. Basically the same system, cleaned up. It has pile in for close combat and stuff. But you're playing with these simplified army lists, which are a bit more balanced. I can tell you that this works for Warhammer Fantasy 7th edition using the 6th edition Ravening Hordes simplified army lists, where everything's just really, organized for points, balanced. And also it, everything's working off those core mechanics. You'll have that issue with like the Bretonnian Knights or the Wood Elves with those simplified army lists. I've not tried this for Warhammer 40,000 9th edition using the 8th edition soft cover indexes that they came out with as like kind of like quick simplified lists for that edition. I'm not sure if that would work. I think it might, because I don't think it has as many special rules and as much of the stratagem creep, which is what really affected 9th edition. And then of course now with Warhammer 40,000 10th edition, we got those index cards and the index lists. Do you think that might be great for when 11th edition comes out?
I think those index lists. I think those in the travesty is those index cards were like literally a blink, and they were out. They were literally out. They were almost out of date the moment you bought them.
Yep, for Space Marines and Tyranids, definitely, yeah.
They definitely were, and I mean, this comes back to the stupidness of the fact, like even the Tyranid Codex, like. There's rules in codexes that are already out of date because they also changed the core rules 2 or 3 months into 40k to do with how like what was it, like devastating wounds or it just like that literally just says to you, why should I bother learning the core rules if they're going to change them so quickly? Whereas like going back to 40k 3rd edition, just live with that rule book for quite a few months before even a codex came out.
Yep. And then the codexes, this first one's coming out, were pretty much just a refinement of the back of the book army lists. They had a few extra special rules, some clarifications.
They were so bare bones.
Yeah, weapons didn't change. Weapons were exactly the same.
Doesn't this feed back into what we've always been saying? It's like, well, if they're so bare bones, like if you keep it that kind of that clarity, that focused element of it, that fits into the whole digital approach to doing apps, army lists, whatever, or just making the rules free, and then everything else is fluff, and you can sell that, or you can do campaign books that have that army information in it, and then scenarios and so forth. It just seems like codexes just seem like pointless. Like they're literally out of date. So quickly.
Last Realm of Fire, I think Brendan was on talking about how everything should just be on an app, and honestly, might be the case. It might be a little tough to reference sometimes when you're scrolling through,
Yeah.
but that might be the way of the future.
And I mean, this comes back again. We talk about Warcry. Like, literally, the person I was showing the game, the first thing he was trying to grasp was what was on the cards of his fighters, which is not much information.
Right.
And then the special abilities on that other card. And then it all clicks and you see how it works. So you're just like, aha, that's my army. That's its playstyle. Done. I don't get that with 40k and Age Sigmar right now. I do not get that. Of course, we can flip the complete fucking opposite direction on this. And we always point to Necromunda. Necromunda is the complete opposite of this, because even if you're playing someone that is the same gang, it doesn't matter, because you're drawing from such a huge... Every gang can buy any insane weapon out there and hire whichever, special character or hired gun, etc., etc., etc. Like, game balance means nothing, because it's about the narrative of the fact that you've just been able to throw a vortex grenade in a game of Necromunda. Like, that's
True.
that's dope.
True. Yeah.
So who the fuck cares? And that's because it's basically a role play game.
Yep. What if you played 40k 10th edition but just ignored special rules? Would that? I mean, I know it would break everything in the opinion of some people.
I think
but
I would
I think
play
it'd be
it.
pretty approachable.
I would play it and ignore. I think you could play 40k 10th edition and ignore all of the. I think throw out all of the army stratagems, throw out all the army specific psychic power. Just play what was on those index cards that first came out, and allow the fix that happened for devastating wounds or whatever the fuck, and just play with that. I'm sure that would be fine.
Still a lot of special rules, though. I don't know.
Anyway,
I guess I'm just a grognard, but I will tell you, coming up in a week, 2 weeks, going to be playing a 3-way game of 3rd edition, Sisters of Battle versus Chaos Space Marines versus Dark Eldar. Wow. It's going to be epic. Yeah, I'll definitely take some photos, keep people in the loop, checking out the Discord. And speaking of epic, Chris, you want to talk about something?
Yes, and it's the choice of a new generation.
Oh, let's talk about
tiny.
Epic, because I mean, this fits into our theme of were the old games better than the new ones, or at least old editions, right? Yeah. Okay, so Legions Imperialis. I've not yet played a game, but I've spent my Christmas reading the rule book, which is not that big. It's not that big a rule book, which is kind of. Hold on, I'm looking at Leviathan.
Yeah, how long's the rule book?
It's about the same size, and it's interesting because I bet it's because the number of the core rules isn't that long. It's the list of the special weapon rules and traits.
Right,
but those are shared by all they're all essentially there's that many because all armies use them. They pull from the same pool of rules. So this is about us again saying that everything sings from the same script, but it's about what bits you pull and how you mix them together to give the unique flavor. So yeah, putting together the minis, fiddly is one way of putting it. Fiddly is another way of putting it. Yeah, they're fucking small. They're still fucking small. They're 8mm, but they're still fucking small. The fact that Devastator Marines were 2 pieces was annoying as fuck.
Yeah, that's not great. So I'm guessing the heavy weapon was a separate
piece. Dreadnoughts were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. So 2 arms, 2 legs, a body, and the back of the body. The basing, I did a thing of where I glued 2 or 3 troopers onto a base. I textured around them and then glued on the other 2 and textured around them. So that way I wasn't having to dab texture paint in between models and fucking them up along the way. So that's my advice. Tanks have options for magnets. They will fit magnets in some of the cases. So that means magnetization is built in. So that's always good. But then, so the models are cool. Could they be better? Possibly. I know there's been a lot of hoo-ha about, oh, look, there's this big bit of plastic between a weapon and the guy's shoulder. That's not very cool. It's like, do you give a fuck at that scale? I do not give a fuck. So, and I know there's there's various 3D printed this and that, and there's Mantic is putting out Warpath, which I think is 10mm scale sci-fi for their setting. And it's like, yeah, so well, this is 8mm. They've taken a decision that means they can do, injection molding. And injection molding means high pressure and it's going in and out quickly. That means things can't tear. So you make these. So I don't care. It doesn't matter. The fact I've got all my Aeronautica stuff already painted up for Space Marines means I have my army is basically 3 detachments, one of tanks, one a demi company, which is basically like troops and a few tanks. And then the other one is an aerial assault company, which is some troops in aircraft and some more aircraft. And that will be my fast attack going in, taking objective, launching assault troopers, and then my tanks and main company supporting them. So that's the place I'm going for. I'm playing Blood Angels. It's all painted up like that, so that gives me a bonus. But ultimately, the rules, right? What are the rules? We've said this. We've always said I do like Epic 40k. It has a flavor to it. It has a simplicity to it, which we've been talking about 3rd edition 40k. I think Epic 40k also brought that simplicity to games. So, what are we dealing with in Legions Imperialis? It's basically Epic Space Marine 2nd edition. And I bought a copy of Epic Space Marine 2nd edition recently, and I've sold it on because Legions Imperialis finally released. And I was like, oh, okay, fuck it. So, but when you compare the rule systems, they're basically the same. The core rules are the same with some finesse. So we still have the order system where you secretly place orders for your troops. They're either going to advance, they're either going to march or charge or first fire or whatever. And you place that secretly, then you reveal them. So you've got that fog of war, which is always cool. You kind of had that in Epic 40k as well. Then, unlike pre-Epic Space Marine 1st and 2nd edition, when you make your movement, that is now alternating activation. So you move a detachment. So that would be, say, 4 stands of Space Marines or 2 tanks or 3 aircraft that are part of a detachment. And then your opponent does the same. So that adds a kind of responsiveness, because when you consider that you're going to have, if you move stuff, you're working out where things are being placed, and you're going to move them with respect to the fact that certain units are also going to charge, so they're going to move a bit further, or they're going to march and move a lot further, or they're going to first fire, so you don't want to get too close to the ones that are going to get to shoot before the rest of your stuff gets to shoot. So that makes movement interesting, especially with taking objective. Then the rest of the turn sequence is basically Epic Space Marine 2nd edition, so anything with orders of first fire, alternating activation again with the person who has initiative choosing. One detachment gets to do its shooting, the other one gets to do its shooting. First fire units have basically sacrificed movement in order to shoot early. Then you've got combat. You pair off models to fight. You roll 2d6 plus combat factor versus their 2d6 plus combat factor. Whoever's got the highest wins. There are no saving throws in close combat, unless I think invulnerable saves count. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But there are no saving throws, which is cool, because combat is vicious.
Yeah, it speeds it up too. That's good.
But comparatively in shooting, and I compare this to 2nd edition Space Marine, a lot more stuff has saving throws, and therefore there's a lot more nuance in weapons. So back in the day, your weapons, your guns, have a range, a number of dice, what you need to roll to hit, and then your opponents would have made saves if they could. Now, your opponents have saving throws more often, but that means weapons have greater variety in armor penetration. So in other words, do you get a save or not? And that modifies the saves. Where the fun now comes in, and that this never existed in Epic Space Marine, is weapon type. So on a Space Marine, bolt guns are light, which basically means they're going to hurt other Marines, they're going to hurt other troopers. But when they fire against a tank, they don't have an armor penetration. And against Titans and super heavy tanks, you can't even score wounds with them. They just bounce off. So that's cool.
Yeah, makes sense.
Light AT weapons, so this is like your Devastator Marines, they have they can harm tanks, they can harm Titans, but the AP immediately drops to 0. So they can harm, but they can't get through the armor. So that's cool. Then you have anti-tank weapons, which are kind of the reverse. They get bonuses against tank, but against troops, I think they lose their AP. Don't quote me on this. I've got to read the rules. But essentially, the whole point about all of this is that weapons on bigger things have a harder time. Like if they're very good at wiping out another Titan or wiping out a Baneblade, they have a hard time wiping out units of troops because they're more dispersed. You know, you're trying to fire a las cannon at a single guy is very different to you firing a barrage of missiles at a unit of troops. That's kind of where the balance. So this all works together to mean that, you know, certain troops are good against certain troops. Certain troops are actually okay against tanks. Some tanks are okay against troops. Some tanks are better against tanks. Some tanks are okay against, you know, knights or titans. And likewise, certain knights are better against titans. Certain titans are only good against other titans or only good against troops.
So,
yeah, go on.
So, Chris, does this kind of like create sort of like I want to say a rock, paper, scissors situation, but
It's
a situation where certain units have advantages against others, but have weaknesses to particular? Because that's something that they always really strive for, let's say in Napoleonic war games, is having that rock, paper, scissors between artillery, cavalry, and infantry.
Yeah, it's very much that, and that's why it reinforces the fact you need like combined arms, because certain units, troops especially, you know, they can occupy buildings. That's going to increase they're going to be harder to hit, they're going to be harder to kill, they're going to get a bonus in combat, they're going to be able to claim objectives. Titans, I think, in the game can't really claim objectives. It's harder for certain things to claim objectives compared to other things.
Yeah.
So again, you can't just win using a certain type of tactic with a certain type of troop. You've got to use the whole, you know, plethora available for you. And then you've got flyers, which obviously add the speed of deploying troops. They add the fact that they move onto the board, do their shooting, and then move off at the end of the turn. So they're not permanent fixtures. So they're very dynamic in that respect. Again, certain weapons shooting at flyers will only hit on a 6 because they're fucking hard to hit. But other weapons are very good anti-aircraft. So there's all of these things. And again, all these weapons, their traits come from the common pool of traits. And I think this is because, you know, in paring the game back, because it is just Marines and Solar Auxilia versus Marines and Solar Auxilia, we've got a very tight set of profiles and rules to distinguish each other. But I still think that provides a framework for if we do in future get them. Because we have the models for their flyers for Orcs and Eldari. So, you know, because like you could see how Orcs might differ in like psychology. They're going to be cheaper, but there's going to be more of them. Eldari are going to be faster. They'll have a lot more skimmers. They might have, you know, more anti-tank weapons, things like that.
They could.
Yeah.
I wonder, you know, there's been huge gripes about this being
just
Horus Heresy only.
Yeah.
And just Marines, just Imperial Guard, basically. And not having any of the Xenos races, Xenos species. I'm wondering, it sounds like, based on what you were saying about the weapons profiles, that you can't easily just port the old Epic 2nd Edition army lists in because they won't have the entire profile.
Yeah, I would say yes and no. I think you could, with a little bit of work, like, I think you could port some of it in, and you would then have to reassess, like, what is the armor save of this unit in this new system? You'd be like, okay, they're Eldari Guardian. Well, they're going to be as good as Imperial Guardsmen, maybe a bit better. Their weapons, definitely shorter range, but they're likely to have a better AP because they're shuriken cannons. They might have more dice because they're shuriken cannon. Things like that. So I think you could do it. And I think given that there's a whole list of traits already you could mostly accommodate most things up front. And I think then you just have to work out the points values. Where the things get a bit more different to 2nd edition, we don't have detachment cards like the old edition, like 2nd edition. So detachment cards, I fucking hated them because it meant when you bought a box of troop, it didn't actually immediately satisfy detachment cards to build certain, groupings of your fighters.
Right.
So now the way you build your formations is more like Epic 40,000 as you go. Like, well, you need to have a HQ. You're going to need to have some core troop, and then you can then purchase some options that may have some limitations on how many of them you take, depending upon the formation that you're building. So that, I think, is where Epic 40K still lives on in how you build your army. And then the things that aren't there is we don't have blast markers like Epic 40K. I kind of miss that. Kind of more of a classic psychology rules. Titans are nowhere near as complicated as they are in Adeptus Titanicus. That differentiates those two games completely. We don't have the weird up, down, left, right targeting dice that you would get against Titans that you had in previous editions of Epic. We're fucking stupid. I really hated those. And I would say ultimately, compared to Epic Second Edition, I had a look at like a picture of like an army in Epic Second Edition, like battle report. And so I would say you've got for an equivalent number of points, you've got a third or so less models. But I think that reflects the fact the models are more, in their profiles are a bit more unique. And so that's my kind of first impressions of Epic. I'm quite excited about it because I've bought some extra terrain. I've got, the Imperial Civitas spires. They're really modular, and so they're kind of like church spires to put on top of your buildings.
Yep.
So my terrain collection is now, for Epic, is now huge. It's now huge for Adeptus Titanicus, let alone Epic. So I'm really excited to play some, and I've got a 3,000 point army because I have I have what I had out of the box game of Legions Imperialis. I bought another box of Marines. I had a Thunderhawk gunship and Xiphon fighters and Storm Hawks for Aeronautica. I had a box of Fire Raptors I hadn't even put together. So they're the ones, they're the tiny Thunderhawks that have guns on the side. So, and then to top it all off, I just need to add like 1,000 points worth of Titans or Knights on top of it. And that's my army. So I'm quite, it's literally everything. It's from the smallest scale to the biggest scale of what you can take in Epic. So that should be a lot of fun to play. But I'm quite excited just to play like smaller game initially, like 1,500, because I think the game supports it.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Yeah, I'm just looking through a couple of images of old second edition Epic armies, and yeah, they seem like they were probably a little bit bigger than the Horus Heresy ones. That's kind of interesting. Legion Imperialis. I'm wondering about the terrain, because isn't it? It's kind of like destructible. You can assemble it as ruined or not.
You can
Are you going to magnetize them or anything like that?
You can play it's destructible. So I think I will get eventually. I will get a set of the ruins that they do now, and I will have a look at my buildings, and I will make some ruin markers for where those buildings were. So literally just draw out a template of the size of that building, and then just put use some sprue whatever the fuck to make rubble, and then texture it, and then that's done. So I think it's cool. I have some my opinion is I think the core game, the box game, could have been better. And here's my my view of what they could have done. So in the core game, you get a box of Space Marines and a box and a half of tanks. Like you get a sprue of Kratos and you get a sprue of Predators, right? And they're gonna do like whatever box, which will give you 2 sprues of each, whatever, right? And then you've got kind of then the same with the Solar Auxilia. You've got a sprue of troops, a sprue of Lima Russ, and a sprue of Malcadors. And then you've got 2 Warhound Titans. I'm like, and then you've got a hardback book. And I'm like, really? Do we really need Titans straight away to learn this game? Like, So I can kind of see they're trying to like give that kind of old school Epic Space Marine feel. with you get the Marines, you get Land Raiders, you get Rhinos, and you get buildings, and you get Titans. But like, let's pare this back a bit. Like, do we need a big, thick rule book in there after what we've been saying about the rules? No. How about having a slim rule book that just gives you exactly the rules for what's in there? Yeah? Because printed paper is expensive and a hardback rulebook is heavy. And then if you take that out, you take out the Titans, put in some extra troops and some tanks, because there aren't that many sprues in the box. I'm going to be perfectly fucking honest, right?
And no terrain.
And then put some
right?
buildings in. Put some buildings in. Or even, fuck it, put in some knights. Put in 2 sprues of knights. Put in 2 sprues of knights, 2 sprues of marines, some tanks, 2 sprues of solar auxiliary and some tanks. Now that seems more fun, and that's more bang for your buck. Because guess what? If you're the type of person that goes, I want to collect Marine Army, and your mate's like, I want to collect Space Marines, you both buy that box and split it each way. Or you're the type of person that goes, I'm going to buy 2 boxes anyway. Now it's a bit more useful, because 4 Warhound Titans is a lot of Titan, and you don't need that amount of Titan in Epic, in Legions Imperialis. So I just think they could have done it a bit better and then sold the rule book separately.
Yeah,
but that's just my opinion, man. That's just my opinion.
No, I think it's a pretty sound opinion. Yeah, it seems a little weird. I also wonder if they're a little worried about people just playing small scale 40K with Legions Imperialis.
They already
miniatures.
fucking are. They already fucking are.
Yeah, I know. So I wonder if that is also why they're kind of making this a little pricey. Unfortunately, I mean, I was thinking about it, doing small
This is
scale.
the other stupid thing. The other stupid thing is, right, they bring out the box game and they're saying, oh, the perfect size to play is like 3,000 points. You see tons of Let's Play videos get you into how to play. They're all playing just like, 1,500, and it looks pretty good. It looks pretty dynamic at that size. And then they did on Warhammer Plus a Let's Play. This is how you play Epic. And they did the tiny detachments. They brought out special rules. If you're playing 1,000 points and you're only using what's in the box game, you can build 2 small detachments using these detachment rules, which have less stipulations on what you need to take. It's just literally like a HQ and a unit of troops and a support. I'm like, well, that's kind of bad if you're having to go like, oh, you just bought this game. And you're like, how do I play it? By the rules, I can't play it. What's in the rule book? I can't play the game. And then you put out an extra thing to, here's how you can play with what's in the box. You're like, for fuck's sake, just like...
Yeah. I mean, they've done that a lot of times, 40K, 3rd edition, 4th edition wasn't like a complete army in the box.
Yeah, right.
Usually for fantasy, they put in the little cardboard miniatures and stuff, right?
Yeah.
To give you something cool.
There's a reason they didn't put cardboard buildings in this, because card is expensive right now.
Oh, understood. Yeah, and they don't print their own card stock, right?
Yeah.
They only have the miniature production. But that was the lack of terrain was a little surprising to me.
Yeah.
Usually they have just like a couple things in there. It's not enough, obviously, for an entire battlefield. But I want to hone in on what you're saying about the points level, because they say 3,000. People are doing half of that, and it looks great, looks fun. Playing 3rd edition 40K, why would I ever play 2,000 points? 1,000 points is fun. It's quick. You get like a good variety of like troops and other units, and it makes it pretty spicy. So
it also fits on your kitchen table.
That's true too. Yeah, you can have a slightly smaller board, but also on a 4x6, it feels good. Yeah, I feel like a lot of times Games Workshop says that you need to have more models on the table than you actually do to have fun.
Yeah. And I've just gone and looked at like the back of the Epic 40,000 box and the fact it came with terrain. And
I was just looking at that too.
It just needs
plastic.
That's what I would have. I think they could have gotten away with that and gone like, hey, here's what you need to. Here's what you get in the box. You get what you need to play and a bit of terrain, and your board size is 3x3 table. That could have worked.
That'd be good. Yeah, these were plastic ruins, plastic Gothic ruins.
They're really nice
Epic
ones.
40,000, yeah. And it came with, I see a cardstock Gargant right there.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Right, so we're going to wrap up on our old rules better. We're going to do a really quick fire on Old World.
Old wine is good wine.
Yes, but expensive wine is good wine also.
Yes, But the older the wine is, the gooder it is.
So,
All right, Old
what do
World.
we like? Old World is definitely multiple editions smashed together. That's for
Yeah.
fucking sure.
Yeah.
So things I like. Charging doesn't mean you hit automatically first. It actually just is an initiative bonus. So even if those fucking grots are charging your elves are gonna fuck them up first, which is
Probably.
thank
Yep.
God.
I like that.
What else?
I think that's good. It's a little wonky to have to track the initiative, but I think that's pretty good. Magic is cleaned up. This might be we'll have to see what the spells are like, but this might be the best magic system they got. It's no cards, spell list. Take your spells, roll 2d6, you get some bonuses, and you try to cast the spell. It's less swingy than the dice pool. Doesn't rely on the random cards, and it's still got like miscasts and that kind of stuff. So it'll be thematic.
And I think it already supports how Khemri will work, because I think Khemri will have just you cast a spell and it has a value. You don't have to roll the dice, which means obviously you're not going to miscast, but you're not going to get overwhelming power. So, it gives you that certainty. So that's fine.
Right.
Let's see what else we got. Movement is it a bit less wonky? Because like if you like movement is movement with wheeling. Like it's classic wheeling. It's classic column formation, skirmish formation, etc.
Well, that's the big thing, is that formations are kind of back, and a bit more of a deal than they were in the later editions. So that's pretty cool. I mean, wheeling's always been kind of wonky, so that's just something I think you're gonna have to deal with.
Yeah. It's a feature,
you
not
know,
a bug.
No,
it might be
both.
buggy. We'll
It's
see.
both. Buggy feature.
But it's charging better because it's movement plus the best of the 2d6 that you roll. So that's all right. I'm okay with that.
It's not as random as the roll
Yeah.
2d6 that was in 8th edition. It is also in 40k these days.
Wasn't it?
It's
Shit. Is that right? In 8th edition, it was if you wanted to charge, you just rolled 2d6, and that was how far you moved.
Yep.
Ooh, yeah, I fucking hated that.
I'm not a huge fan of it. This, because it includes your movement in. It's a movement plus d6. That means it's basically this is your regular movement for these guys, plus they're running to charge in. That seems reasonable to me, and it's kind of a risk thing, right?
Yeah, you're gonna average
if you're very
on
close,
average, yeah.
Yeah, if you're very close, you might be able to get them. If you're far away, but with Warhammer Fantasy back in the day, you remember playing it. It was all about, you didn't get to pre-measure. You're all like, you're kind of scooching forward. You're trying to figure out, like, triangulating with your shooting. Am I going to be able to charge?
And some people are just perfect with measuring distances.
Yeah, and that was an
Well, they
advantage. It
just
was a
are.
skill, but
so this makes it less of a skill and more about pressing your luck, which is good.
Right.
And that means obviously they've done the thing where if you have got a unit that's good at movement, like mounted, it's going to be, if they're going to charge, it's going to be movement plus the best of 2d6 plus a further d6. So again, there's an element of you could go quite far, but there's also that kind of like there's a nice you on average you're going to go, how far you're going to charge, and it's a question then of, are you going to risk it, or are you going to wait until you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to get that charge.
Right.
So I like that, because that works in with like the whole how the nuance of how combats win, because I think combat's basically going to be much like how it's ever been, but the psychology of how you lose combat is not just a straight you flee or you hold. There's either you hold, you fall back gracefully, or you flee. And that fall back gracefully, I think, is really, really interesting, because sometimes as a unit charging into another, you're hoping you're going to fuck them up in that first go. And the whole point why you charged was because you get that initiative bonus, you get strike first, whatever. You get the charging bonus that might be on a weapon like lances, like you get that extra strength bonus, whatever.
Yep.
Or you're a chariot and you get the extra damage, blah, blah, blah. But if you don't wipe out that unit on that first charge, and they fall back gracefully, are you really want to follow them up? Do you really want to grind against them? Like, because that's when, like, that unit of, I don't know, like Chaos Warriors, they're going to be like, no, we can. They've got their opportunity to like beat you down. So I think that's
Yeah.
really interesting.
And it also brings in a lot of interesting dilemmas because you could have your opponent fall back. So, you're assuming in Warhammer, it's probably going to be two battle lines smashing against each other. If some of these units fall back, that can leave gaps to do flank charges into other units. If you're able to, kind of press your luck and get in there, you might not want to follow them up. You might want to flank charge someone who's already in combat with another one of your units. If you hope they're going to last another turn. So that makes it really interesting, adds in a lot of dilemmas. And, this really takes a lot of inspiration, I think, from other Warhammer and Warhammer adjacent games like War Master and then Black Powder, which uses the same system. It has similar psychology to units falling back, which is pretty cool.
And I think that whole falling back gracefully and that balance of how combat's going to work, I think we're actually going to properly finally see in Warhammer Fantasy Battle, like wheeling of armies where, the battle line rotates on the battlefield as a result of these graceful fallbacks and the other side pressing, your other flank pressing itself forward. So, yeah, that's all. I'm actually, because of this, I'm actually quite excited about Warhammer Fantasy Battle, which leads us to the final question. What the fuck are we like? If assuming we've got some spare cash, which I think my job on my mental health well-being may well fund me my army. I shit you not. What army do you want to collect? I'll go first because I think people are pretty clear on this. I like Khemri. I bought Khemri, the Khemri box army when it first came out back in the day in 2004, 6th edition. I got that on staff discount because no one had bought it after a week, and I was like, I'm staff, I have discount.
Nice.
I had a lot of fun with them, and it would be a fucking easy army to paint because it's literally in this day and age is spray brown, spray bone, zenitha white, going with details and gold. Done. That's like fucking easy, will look great. And that boxed army they've shown off is huge. It's like 2 units of skelly spearmen, 2 units of archers, 2 units of mounted troops with either spears and bows, some big monster, and chariots. Like, it's fucking massive. Yeah. It's massive. But given that I'm a lazy painter these days, and because of the way the rules are set out, I'm thinking a classic Chaos Army of Nurgle would be fucking rad. Just Chaos Warriors of Nurgle. Really nice. And I've had an army like that before, but that was back when the Chaos Warriors were the first multi-part Chaos Warriors, which were a fucking ball ache to put together. They were ugly fuckers. They were so ugly. So that's where I'm leaning. How about yourself?
Well, my armies back in the day were vampire counts and ogres, so those are both out. At least with the initial launch. I'm thinking about Beasts of Chaos with a Nurgle theme. When I played vampire counts, actually my zombies were half like Gores and Ungores and half zombie kits, and I still have some zombie pieces floating around. So I think that'd be pretty cool. But
Beasts of Chaos would be kind of neat.
Yeah. I want to see what their mechanics are like because they weren't that great back in the day. I want to see if they're more of a skirmish army or if they actually have more rank and file now. Yeah. But also, I don't have a lot of space and probably shouldn't buy any more miniatures. So that might put the kibosh on the old world, unfortunately. But I'm really highly interested in it.
I'd be interested to see what like 1,000 points looks like in this game system and how playable it is. Yeah. Like if it's playable at 1,000 points, then I'm in.
Yeah, you could kind of do 1,000 points in 6th edition fantasy and 7th edition.
I'm just like thinking of things like like vampire counts, right? With with the recent Death Rattle skeletons that had their designs first in Curse City. Like that vampire counts army now would look super so cool. Sweet. It would be. It's literally the vampire. Oh my god! It's like I'm looking at all my Curse City stuff, and it's like I just need base converters for like the troops. I've got zombies, base convert those. I've got vampires, base convert those. I've got giant bats, base converters on those. Alternatively, well, no, I don't say alternatively, but what if they do in the vampire counts? They have a way that you can use your night haunts in there, so you've got units of ghosts.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
why
they
the
always have
fuck
the
not?
spirit host and stuff. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it would be awesome. I think they want to keep
Oh no,
Age of
vampire counts
Sigmar.
aren't in this edition, are they? Though I don't think initially. I think it's
They're
just
not.
Khemri.
They're not. Yeah, it's just Khemri,
Shit.
and because they want to keep the Age of Sigmar stuff in Age of Sigmar. Basically, that's why they really are doing the old world now. After they finally got Cities of Sigmar to have their own actual model line.
Yeah.
Although
Oh.
Empire using some of those Cities of Sigmar kits would be pretty sweet. So
I mean, Empire's
tempting.
pretty cool. Empire armies are pretty cool anyway, I think. And this is where the true excitement of all this comes from, is because, you know, what this means for Mordheim, for people that still play it, is great because there's models coming out again. And this leads us into our last thing, which is obviously we're going to be doing some more Darkhammer episodes. So I think we're going to be talking about some old world stuff. We're going to we've covered Bretonia, haven't we? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you did that one.
So I think we should definitely talk about Khemri as like a place to adventure, because I think it's an interesting place for old world adventurers to go down, and will also find remnants of the Khemri Empire when they once, you know, their empire extended almost to the old world, or actually into the old world. So I think that'd be really cool to go, like, you know, fighting against or uncovering old tombs of these ancient sinister undead.
There was a Khemri source book for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition. Actually, we could take a look at that.
Oh yeah, there was.
Yeah, something like Tomb of the Lich Lord, or no, that was a Warhammer Quest adventure. Never mind. But there was an actual source book.
Yeah, cool. I think that's it. It's been there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot we covered there. So let's finish this on a final take home message. So older systems, were they better? Yay or nay, Mike?
They're great for me because you already kind of learned them, right? It's so easy to just like slip back in. They might not be better for newer players, and I think that's something to really study. I think Brendan was making some really great points about that with some of the like the kids Warhammer events he's been running and that kind of stuff. So I think we should really analyze that. There could be generational differences that make some editions better than those for others. Games Workshop does actually do a lot of market research, I should say, to figure things out and test things more than they used to. So they might know better than we do about what's great. But for me, 3rd edition 40k is pretty dope. Yeah,
I would say, if I had to pick editions to play of 40k, I would go for mostly, let's say 4th edition, that sweet spot between, 3rd edition with polish is good.
Correct.
With epic, I still love Epic 40k, but I'm happy with what we've got here. This is cool. Is it all the old systems always better? I mean, no, because Warcry's awesome. New Necromunda's wicked.
Shadow War Armageddon came out. It was 2nd edition, but then kind of just faded really fast in favor of Kill Team.
I mean, I haven't played New Kill Team yet. I still look at the rules and get confused. So there's something to be said there. So yeah, if you agree with us, you can just put a like. You can listen to the rest of our episodes. If you hate our views, you should tell us that you fucking hate our views, and
come on our Discord. Come on our Discord. And have at us.
Bitch and whine. Tell us why you like Epic. Tell us why you hate Epic. Tell us why you're excited for the Old World. Tell us why you think Old World is a bag of dog shit, really, and why are they bringing back? Why are we playing with models that are now 30 years old? Maybe.
Yeah, sometimes. Yep.
Oh shit. Actually, yeah, God, they're really old. They're at least 20 years old in the case of Khemri.
Yeah.
Well,
hey, 40k, they're still using the Catachan jungle fighters from
oh fuck yeah,
the 90s.
Oh, what year were they? 1998, 1990.
Yeah.
No, they're earlier than that. I know, 1998, 1999, 2000. Yeah, they're fucking awful. Wow, they're so shit. And the fact that Eldari are getting updated before them. Yeah. Okay, well that's Realm of Fire. Yeah, you know where to contact us at darkdaysradio at gmail.com to email your opinions. Join our Discord, Dark Days Radio. Join our Instagram, Dark Days Radio. We're on Threads. We need to post a bit more Threads because Twitter X is a bag of dog bollocks there. So come to Threads. It's got better play. Threads does really nice way of doing images, so I should get on that and do, because it splits. You can split images into panels, and then when you use it as a carousel, it stitches them all together to be a single image. So it's kind of cool.
That's pretty cool.
And then we're going to talk about some roleplay stuff in Darkhammer. We're going to talk more about, as I said, Khemri, and I think we've got to talk about the Lizardman at some point because that's cool.
That'd be good.
And
RPGs for Dark Days Radio really kicking off again. Yeah, got some Cult coming up. That'll be sweet.
Cult and other stuff. We're going to basically teach you, show you how to play, show how to make characters, tell you why the game's good or shit, whichever. But you'll get an honest opinion because we want to do some other stuff. So if you've got some games you want us to play, tell us. That's about it. So thanks for taking time, Mike, to come on and chat 3rd edition. And we'll be back mostly in a month's time or so. Hopefully once we've played some more games of these things and give you some more hot takes on new stuff from Games Workshop and other war games. So goodbye for now.
Take it easy.